Overnight, the Trump administration claimed American forces launched a massive secret operation inside Venezuela targeting Nicolás Maduro in what officials called one of the boldest U.S. military actions in modern history. From fighter jets to political warnings, the operation signaled a dramatic new phase in American power, regional influence, and global geopolitical tensions. The United States administration delivered one of its strongest foreign policy and military messages in recent years, describing a large-scale overnight operation in Venezuela that officials claimed resulted in the capture of Nicolás Maduro and a dramatic shift in the country's future. The remarks were presented not only as a military success, but also as a warning to governments and organizations viewed by Washington as threats to American interests and regional stability. Senior officials repeatedly framed the operation as a turning point for U.S. influence in the Western Hemisphere. According to officials, months of intelligence gathering, military preparation, surveillance coordination, and strategic planning led to an overnight mission involving air, naval, cyber, intelligence, and special operations capabilities. The operation was described by the administration as one of the most complex military actions undertaken in recent years. Officials said the mission involved aircraft launching from multiple locations across the hemisphere with surveillance systems, intelligence assets, fighter escorts, and special forces operating together in real time. The administration argued the objective was to apprehend individuals already indicted under U.S. law and bring them to face justice. The administration also argued that the operation was not simply about one political leader, but about years of instability, organized crime, narcotics trafficking, migration pressures, and regional security concerns linked to Venezuela. Officials repeatedly connected the issue to illegal drugs, criminal organizations, border security, and what they described as threats to American interests. The president opened his remarks by emphasizing American military strength and presenting the operation as proof of renewed U.S. power on the global stage. The United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. The president said, while praising what he described as overwhelming military precision and force. Throughout the briefing, officials repeatedly returned to one central theme: deterrence. The message was that adversaries should assume American warnings and threats would now be followed by decisive action. The administration argued that previous governments often failed to respond forcefully to growing security threats, while portraying the current leadership as more aggressive and willing to act. Officials suggested the operation demonstrated that the United States would intervene when national interests are perceived to be at risk. Military leaders later provided operational details, saying preparations lasted for months and required extensive intelligence work. So according to officials, planners studied movement patterns, locations, routines, security structures, and communication systems before determining the right moment for action. Weather, civilian risk, timing, and tactical surprise were described as critical operational factors. One senior military official said the mission depended on coordination between multiple intelligence and defense agencies. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional, the official said, while describing the lengthy planning process before the operation moved forward. Military officials claimed helicopters flew at extremely low altitude above water, while fighter aircraft electronic warfare systems, surveillance networks, and remotely piloted aircraft provided cover and operational support. The administration also described the use of cyber and intelligence capabilities designed to suppress defenses and protect forces entering Venezuelan territory. The operation was presented as an example of modern warfare capabilities involving cyber tools, intelligence integration, aerial dominance, and coordinated military response systems. Officials claimed aircraft encountered resistance and came under fire, but continued the mission successfully. They stated that one aircraft sustained damage yet remained operational throughout the operation. The administration repeatedly emphasized that no American personnel were killed during the mission. Officials argued that the outcome reflected extensive planning, training, and overwhelming military superiority. Military leadership portrayed the operation as proof that the United States maintains unmatched global reach and force projection capabilities. One official stated, "America can project our will anywhere, anytime. That comment reflected a broader theme running throughout the speeches: the restoration of American influence and deterrence in the region and beyond. The administration also linked the operation to narcotics trafficking and organized crime. Maduro was accused of connections to criminal activity that officials claimed harmed the United States directly. Officials referenced earlier indictments and argued the mission was part of a larger effort to hold people accountable under bad. The president described Maduro as responsible for severe harm beyond Venezuela's borders and claimed criminal groups associated with Venezuela contributed to violence and instability inside the United States. The remarks included repeated references to gangs, border security, narcotics trafficking, and domestic crime concerns. In explaining why Venezuela mattered to American policy, the administration argued that instability in nearby regions directly affects U.S. national security. The president said stable neighbors, energy access, and regional influence are strategic priorities for Washington. Energy repeatedly appeared in the speeches as both an economic and national security issue. Officials argued decades of mismanagement left Venezuela's oil infrastructure damaged, outdated, and underperforming. The administration claimed rebuilding the country's energy production could become central to future plans. The president suggested American companies could help restore production capacity while generating economic recovery and regional stability. According to the administration, control over energy resources plays a major role in global geopolitical competition and long-term security strategy. Questions from reporters later turned toward governance and the future political structure of Venezuela. Journalists asked who would run the country, whether elections would take place, and how long outside involvement might continue. The administration suggested transitional arrangements could be necessary before long-term political structures emerge. The president indicated that rebuilding institutions, infrastructure, and security systems would require time. We're going to make sure that country is run properly, he said while discussing future arrangements. The comments immediately raised broader questions regarding sovereignty and foreign involvement, although officials framed their approach as stabilization rather than occupation. Several reporters also questioned whether U.S. troops would remain on the ground. The answers did not fully clarify future deployments, but strongly emphasized military readiness and operational flexibility. Officials repeatedly stated that they were prepared to act again if necessary. The president declared, "We're ready to go again if we have to." That remark reinforced another recurring message throughout the briefing: deterrence depends on the willingness to act decisively. Questions also focused on international reaction and geopolitical consequences. Reporters asked how countries including China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba might respond to the operation and its aftermath. Officials acknowledged the wider geopolitical implications, but insisted American interests would remain the priority. Cuba received significant attention during the exchange. Administration officials described Cuba's economic and political situation negatively and suggested developments there could become future policy concerns. One senior official implied governments observing the events should reconsider assumptions about American responses under the current administration. The broader message was unmistakable. Countries viewed as hostile should take American warnings seriously. Another major theme throughout the briefing involved political leadership and presidential authority. Officials repeatedly contrasted current decision-making with previous administrations. The president portrayed his record as one defined by action rather than hesitation. He argued earlier governments often failed to protect American interests or avoided difficult decisions. Supporters within the administration echoed that argument, saying recent operations demonstrate consistency between presidential rhetoric and military action. A senior defense official praised the president's approach, saying, "This is America first. This is peace through strength." That phrase summarized much of the administration's foreign policy philosophy as presented during the briefing. Military leaders, meanwhile, focused heavily on the personnel involved in the mission. They thanked service members, intelligence officers, pilots, planners, and operational support teams for their coordination and discipline. One official explained that missions of such complexity depend on years of training and preparation. Another stressed that operations are rehearsed repeatedly, not simply to succeed once, but to minimize every possible risk of failure. The speeches consistently highlighted professionalism, readiness, and operational precision. Military officials argued that no challenge is too difficult when planning, intelligence, coordination, and execution align effectively. The operation was presented not merely as an isolated event, but as an example of future American capability and resolve. In that sense, officials appeared to be speaking not only to domestic audiences, but also to foreign governments and adversaries observing closely around the world. Questions later shifted toward Congress and oversight procedures. Reporters asked whether lawmakers were informed beforehand. Officials responded that operational secrecy made advance notification impossible. They argued premature disclosure could have endangered personnel, compromised tactical surprise, and risked mission failure. One official described the operation as trigger-based, meaning the timing depended on constantly changing operational conditions. The administration defended withholding information as necessary for national security and mission success. Reporters also asked what Maduro allegedly did during the operation itself. Officials claimed he attempted to reach secure areas inside the compound, but was unable to avoid capture. Descriptions portrayed rapid movement, intense pressure, and overwhelming operational speed inside the target area. The administration maintained that events unfolded faster than resistance forces could organize an effective response. However, independent verification of many operational details was not discussed during the briefing. The speeches later moved toward broader ideological and strategic themes. Officials described renewed American dominance in the Western Hemisphere and argued decades of neglect weakened regional influence. References were made to long-standing U.S. foreign policy principles emphasizing American strategic interests in neighboring regions. The administration framed current policy as restoring influence and preventing hostile foreign powers from gaining strategic footholds close to the United States. Energy, migration, organized crime, narcotics trafficking, and national security were repeatedly connected into a single strategic argument. Instability nearby eventually affects the United States directly. That rationale appeared central to the administration's justification for the operation. Toward the end of the briefing, officials repeatedly returned to ordinary Venezuelan citizens. The president said Venezuelans deserve stability, opportunity, security, and economic recovery. He argued people forced to flee the country should eventually have conditions that allow them to return safely. Supporters of the operation portrayed intervention as helping populations rather than punishing them. Critics would likely question implementation, long-term outcomes, sovereignty concerns, and the broader consequences of foreign involvement, though those debates were largely absent from the briefing itself. Instead, the administration focused on certainty, deterrence, and resolve. Officials said future threats would continue to receive decisive responses. They argued the operation had fundamentally changed regional calculations and demonstrated renewed American power. The president concluded with a warning directed toward hostile governments, criminal organizations, and foreign adversaries. The message was simple: American responses should no longer be underestimated. Military officials ended key event by honoring the personnel involved in the mission. They emphasized courage, coordination, sacrifice, discipline, and professionalism. The final impression left by the briefing was one of strength, deterrence, strategic messaging, and renewed assertions of American influence in the Western Hemisphere. Whether viewed as a historic security operation, a geopolitical turning point, or a dramatic assertion of American power, the administration clearly intended the announcement to resonate far beyond Venezuela. Above all, one message echoed throughout the speeches, answers, and official statements. Washington wanted allies and adversaries alike to believe that warnings issued by the United States would now carry consequences.